He gave her the world, then plotted to erase her from it. A pregnant Asian American artist overhears her powerful CEO husband plotting to discard her and their unborn son with his mistress. Her cold promise to him? You'll see exactly what kind of game I'm playing. But how could a betrayed wife possibly fight back against a manipulative millionaire? He thought she was a naive pawn he could easily buy off, never imagining she would forge an alliance with the one person he thought he controlled. The other woman. Could these two rivals truly dismantle his entire empire from the inside? Before we begin, let us know what city or country you're watching from in the comments below. The scent of brewing Kenyan coffee and fresh croissants filled the penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue. Sunlight, crisp and golden, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the minimalist white marble floors. From this vantage point, Central Park was a sprawling tapestry of autumn colors, crimson, gold, and amber, a breathtaking masterpiece laid out just for them. Ava Chen Sterling ran a hand over her swollen belly, a soft, maternal smile playing on her lips. At 28, she was living a life that felt like a beautifully written script. She had met Ethan Sterling 3 years ago at a charity gala. He was the city's most eligible bachelor, heir to the multi-billion-dollar Sterling Industries, with a smile that could disarm armies and eyes the color of a summer sky. She was a budding gallery curator, with a passion for uncovering obscure artists and a heart that was perhaps a little too open, a little too trusting. He had pursued her with a charming, relentless determination that left her breathless. He hadn't cared that she came from a modest background in Queens, the daughter of immigrant parents who ran a small bakery. He said he loved her authenticity, her kindness, her quiet strength. He called her his anchor in a world of superficiality and corporate sharks. And now they were expecting a son. Their son. Morning, beautiful. Ethan's voice, smooth as single malt scotch, came from behind her. He wrapped his strong arms around her, his hands coming to rest protectively over hers on her stomach. He nuzzled his face into her hair, inhaling deeply. You and our little man are glowing today. Ava leaned back into his embrace, a wave of pure contentment washing over her. This was real. This love. This life. This baby kicking gently beneath her heart. We were just admiring the view, she murmured, and waiting for croissants. He chuckled, his chest vibrating against her back. Always about the food, my love. He kissed her temple, his lips warm. I have to head out early. Board meeting. Old man Sterling is breathing down my neck about the new merger with Rossi Corp. He moved to the espresso machine, his movements fluid and confident in his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit. At 32, Ethan Sterling was the very picture of success. But lately, Ava had noticed a faint shadow of strain behind his perfect smile. The Rossi Corp merger, a massive deal that would solidify Sterling Industries' dominance in the tech sector, was clearly taking its toll. He was more distracted, his nights longer, his phone buzzing at all hours. Is everything okay with the deal? She asked, turning to face him. Just business, Ava, he said, a little too quickly. He handed her a cup of decaf coffee. The usual posturing and power plays. Nothing for you to worry that pretty head about. You just focus on staying relaxed and growing our heir. He winked, but the comment, meant to be endearing, pricked at a familiar insecurity. He often treated her like a precious, fragile doll to be protected from the harsh realities of his world. She loved his protective nature, but sometimes she yearned to be seen as a partner, not just a beautiful appendage to his life. She had given up her job at the gallery at his insistence so she could have a stress-free pregnancy. Now her days were filled with yoga, prenatal appointments, and decorating the nursery, a life of luxurious, suffocating ease. I'll call you after my meeting, he said, gulping down his espresso. He gave her a swift, almost perfunctory kiss. Love you. I love you too, she called after his retreating form. The heavy door of the penthouse clicked shut, leaving her alone in the vast, silent space. The silence seemed to stretch on for hours. Ava busied herself arranging the new shipment of baby clothes, tiny cashmere sweaters, and impossibly small shoes. She called her mother, recounting Ethan's latest sweet gesture, painting the picture of a perfect marriage, because to admit to the tiny hairline cracks would be to admit her own fears. Around 2 p.m. her phone rang. It was Ethan. "Hey, love," she answered, her voice brightening instantly. "How did the meeting go?" "Still in it." He sounded rushed, distracted. "Listen, I'm stepping out for a second. Things are intense. I just wanted to hear your voice." Her heart swelled. Even in the middle of a billion-dollar negotiation, he thought of her. "I'm always here for you, Ethan. You've got this." "I know. You're my rock, Ava. You know that, right?" "I know," she whispered, a tear of happiness welling in her eye. "Okay, gotta go. Talk soon. Love you." "Love you too." She heard a click. But it wasn't the decisive finality of a call ending. It was a softer sound, the sound of a phone being placed on a hard surface, perhaps a conference table or a desk. The line was still open. He must have locked his phone by mistake, thinking he'd hung up. A small, amused smile touched her lips. She could just imagine him, flustered and striding back into the boardroom. She was about to hang up when she heard his voice again, but this time the tone was completely different. It was stripped of the warmth and affection he used with her. This voice was low, intimate, and laced with a weariness that startled her. "The things I have to say to keep her calm," he sighed. Ava froze, the phone pressed hard against her ear. Her blood ran cold. Her? Who was her? A woman's voice responded, husky and laced with amusement. "Poor Ethan, having to play the doting husband. It must be exhausting." Ava's breath caught in her throat. She didn't recognize the voice, but its confidence and familiarity with Ethan sent a spear of ice through her chest. "You have no idea, Isabella," Ethan's voice replied. "She's so wonderfully naive. Thinks this baby is the culmination of our great love story." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "She has no concept of what's really at stake. The timing of this pregnancy, it couldn't be worse." Isabella Rossi, the CEO of Rossi Corp. The woman from the merger. "Is she getting suspicious?" Isabella asked, her tone sharpening. "Not at all. She lives in her perfect little bubble. I tell her I love her, and she melts. It's almost too easy," Ethan said dismissively. "It's you I can't stop thinking about. Last night was incredible." Ava's knees buckled. She sank onto the plush carpet of the nursery, one hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. The other hand clutched her stomach, a desperate primal instinct to shield her son from the poison pouring through the phone. "It was," Isabella purred. "But we need to stay focused, darling. My father won't sign if there are any scandals. Your marriage, your pregnant wife, it's the perfect cover. The wholesome family man, the stable heir. It's what's selling this deal to my board." I know. Ethan sounded impatient now. "And we're so close. Once the ink is dry, once I have full control, I can start to untangle things. I can finally be with you. Properly." "And Ava?" Isabella's voice was like a shard of glass. "What happens to the sweet, naive wife and her heir?" Ava held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for an eternity. Then came Ethan's answer, a sentence that would be burned into her memory for the rest of her life, a sentence that took her beautiful, gilded world and smashed it into a million unrecognizable pieces. "She'll be well taken care of," he said, his voice cold and clinical, as if discussing a line item on a budget sheet. "A generous settlement. She'll want for nothing. It's a small price to pay for the rest of our lives, isn't it? For our empire." The line went dead. The true final click echoed in the silent nursery. Ava didn't move. She just sat there, on the floor, surrounded by the soft blues and whites of a future that had just been erased. The sunlight that had seemed so warm and golden minutes ago now felt harsh and mocking. The view of the park was no longer beautiful. It was just a distant, indifferent world. She wasn't his anchor. She was his cover. She wasn't his love. She was his strategy. And their son, their precious baby boy, wasn't an heir to a legacy of love. He was a complication, a problem to be untangled with a generous settlement. The first sob that escaped her was a raw, guttural sound of an animal in pain. The perfect script of her life had been a lie, and she, the star of the show, had been the only one who didn't know the lines. Time ceased to have meaning. Ava remained on the nursery floor, the plush rug absorbing the silent, shuddering tremors that racked her body. The phone had fallen from her grasp, lying face down on the carpet like a tiny black tombstone marking the death of her marriage. Each beat of her heart was a dull, painful thud against her ribs. The words echoed, replaying in a torturous loop inside her head. The things I have to say to keep her calm. So wonderfully naive. The timing of this pregnancy, it couldn't be worse. She'll be well taken care of, a generous settlement, a small price to pay for the rest of our lives, for our empire. Empire, their empire, his and Isabella's. The nausea that rose in her had nothing to do with her pregnancy. It was the acrid taste of betrayal, so potent it felt like it was corroding her from the inside out. Every memory of the past 3 years flashed before her eyes, now tainted and grotesque. Every I love you, every tender touch, every shared laugh was a lie. A performance. A carefully constructed illusion designed to lull her into a state of blissful ignorance while he built a different future with another woman. He hadn't pursued her for her authenticity. He had pursued her for her malleability. Her quiet background, her lack of powerful connections, her trusting nature. They weren't qualities he cherished. They were assets he exploited. She was the perfect placeholder wife, a human shield to protect his reputation while he sealed the deal that truly mattered. A fresh wave of pain, sharp and piercing, ripped through her. It wasn't just about the affair. It was the cold, calculated cruelty of it all. The dismissal of her, of their son. They weren't people to him. They were obstacles, liabilities on a balance sheet. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Slowly, shakily, she pushed herself up. Her reflection in the polished surface of the changing table was a stranger, a woman with haunted eyes, a face pale and slick with tears, her expression one of utter desolation. She looked at the perfectly arranged room, the hand-painted mural of stars and clouds on the wall, the crib assembled by Ethan himself just last weekend, the mobile of gently smiling felt animals. It was all a stage, a set for a play that had abruptly ended. She walked out of the nursery, closing the door softly behind her, as if to trap the ghosts of that conversation inside. She moved through the vast, empty penthouse, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. Every object screamed of his deceit. The Jeff Koons sculpture he'd bought her for their anniversary, the photograph on the mantel of them in Tuscany, smiling and sun-kissed, the cashmere throw on the sofa he would wrap around her on cool evenings. Lies. All of it. She needed to think. Her first instinct was to scream, to smash everything in sight, to call him and unleash a torrent of rage and pain. But the cold, clinical tone of his voice on the phone had done something to her. It had flipped a switch. The soft, trusting Ava was gone, replaced by a woman hollowed out and filled with a chilling, unfamiliar clarity. He thought she was naive. He thought she was weak. He thought she could be bought off with a settlement. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The key turned in the lock around 6:30 p.m. Ava was sitting on the sofa, staring out at the city lights as they began to glitter against the darkening sky. She had washed her face, erasing the tear tracks. She had changed into a simple black dress. She had composed herself into a statue of unnerving calm. "Ava, I'm home!" Ethan's voice boomed, full of false cheer. He walked into the living room, loosening his tie. He stopped when he saw her sitting there, so still and silent. "Hey," he said, his brow furrowing slightly. "You're quiet tonight. Everything okay?" She turned her head slowly to look at him. She studied his face. The handsome features. The easy smile now forming on his lips. The eyes that she used to think held the universe. Now all she saw was a mask. "I'm fine," she said, her voice even and devoid of emotion. "How was the rest of your meeting?" He tossed his briefcase onto a chair and flopped down on the opposite end of the sofa, letting out an exaggerated sigh. "Brutal. Absolutely brutal. I think we finally made a breakthrough, though. Old man Rossi is a tough nut to crack, but his daughter, Isabella, she's sharp. We're on the same page." Ava felt a dark, bitter humor bubble up inside her. On the same page? He had no idea. "Isabella Rossi," Ava said the name, testing how it felt on her tongue. It tasted like ash. "She sounds impressive." "She is?" Ethan agreed, oblivious. "Fierce? Ambitious? We speak the same language." He looked over at her, his expression softening into the familiar, patronizing warmth. "It's also cutthroat. Makes me appreciate coming home to you. To peace. To something real." The word real hung in the air between them, a sickening parody. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away, tucking it under her leg. He frowned. "Ava, what's wrong? You're acting strange. Is it the baby? Are you not feeling well?" "The baby is fine," she said flatly. "Then what is it? Talk to me." This was it. The moment of confrontation. But her planned explosion of rage didn't come. Instead, a cold, precise anger guided her words. She decided to play his game. "You called me this afternoon," she began, her gaze unwavering. "From your meeting." "I did." He nodded, looking pleased with himself. "Just wanted to check in." "You didn't hang up properly, Ethan." The shift in his posture was instantaneous. It was almost imperceptible. A slight stiffening of his shoulders, a flicker in his eyes. But to Ava, whose senses were now hyper-attuned to his deceit, it was a seismic event. The mask was cracking. "What?" he said, forcing a confused laugh. "What are you talking about?" "The line stayed open. You put the phone down and I heard you. I heard everything." The color drained from his face. The charming, confident facade crumbled, revealing the panicked, cornered man beneath. He stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. For the first time since she'd met him, Ethan Sterling was speechless. "I heard you talking to Isabella," she continued, her voice gaining strength with every word of truth. "I heard you call me naive. I heard you complain about the timing of our son's birth. I heard you talk about last night with her." Each sentence was a physical blow. He flinched, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. "Ava, listen. You don't understand," he stammered, holding up his hands. "It's not what you think. It's complicated." "Oh, it's not complicated at all," she shot back, a spark of fire finally igniting in her voice. "It's actually very simple. You've been lying to me. You've been sleeping with your business partner. Our marriage, our life, our child. It's all just a cover for you. A strategy to close your precious deal." "No, that's not true. I love you," he insisted, his voice raspy with desperation. He moved towards her, but she shot up from the sofa, putting distance between them. "Don't you dare say that to me!" she hissed, her composure finally breaking. The pain was too immense to hold back any longer. "Don't you dare! I heard you, Ethan. I heard what you have planned for me. A generous settlement? You think you can just pay me off? Write a check and discard me and your son like some inconvenient business expense? Ava, please. You're pregnant. You're emotional. You're twisting things," he pleaded, resorting to the oldest trick in the gaslighter's handbook. But it didn't work. Not anymore. "Don't you dare blame this on my pregnancy," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low level. "My pregnancy is the only real thing in this entire sham of a life. The only thing you haven't managed to taint. But you tried." She walked towards the bedroom, her movements stiff and robotic. He followed her, still babbling excuses and apologies. "We can fix this, Ava. I'll end it with her. It meant nothing. It was just for the deal. I swear." She turned at the bedroom door and gave him a look of such profound pity and contempt that it stopped him in his tracks. "The most pathetic part, Ethan," she said softly, "is that I think you actually believe that. You've lied so much. You don't even know what the truth is anymore. But I do. I heard it today, loud and clear." She closed the bedroom door in his face and locked it. Leaning against the cool wood, she finally allowed the tears to fall again, hot and furious. They weren't the tears of a victim anymore. They were tears of rage, of grief, of a woman who had just seen the man she loved for who he truly was, a hollow coward. Outside the door, his desperate banging and pleading were just meaningless noise. The man she had married was gone. In his place was a stranger, and she would never, ever let that stranger touch her or her son again. The sanctuary of the master bedroom felt more like a prison cell. Ethan's frantic apologies and desperate pleas eventually subsided, replaced by a heavy, defeated silence that seeped under the door. Ava knew he was still out there, waiting, plotting his next move, formulating a new set of lies. She didn't sleep. She sat in an armchair by the window, watching the endless stream of headlights on the street below, each one a life moving forward while hers had come to a dead stop. The rage that had fueled her confrontation had cooled, leaving behind a deep, aching void. Her thoughts, however, were surprisingly clear. She couldn't stay here. Not one more night. This penthouse, once her dream home, was now a monument to his betrayal. Every surface felt contaminated by his lies. Her mind raced, sorting through the logistics of escape. She had money in her personal account, a generous allowance from Ethan that she'd barely touched, preferring to use her own savings from her curator days. It was a bitter irony that his money would now fund her departure. Where would she go? Her parents' small apartment in Queens was the first thought, but she dismissed it just as quickly. They would be heartbroken, and their pity and worry would be suffocating. She needed space, not sympathy. She needed to breathe air that wasn't thick with the past. Then a name surfaced from the fog of her grief. Maya. Maya Singh, her best friend from college. A fierce, no-nonsense human rights lawyer who had never been impressed by Ethan's wealth or charm. "He's too smooth, Ava," Maya had warned her once, years ago. "Nobody is that perfect." Ava had dismissed it as cynicism. Now, Maya's words felt prophetic. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone and found Maya's number. It was past midnight, but she knew Maya would answer. "Ava, it's the middle of the night. Is everything okay? Is it the baby?" Maya's voice was instantly alert, sharp with concern. The dam broke. Ava's carefully constructed composure crumbled, and a choked sob escaped her lips. "Maya," she whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan. It's all a lie." In a torrent of broken sentences and ragged breaths, she recounted everything. The phone call, the conversation with Isabella, the confrontation. She didn't spare a single ugly detail. Maya listened patiently on the other end, her silence a comforting presence. There was no "I told you so," no judgment. No. When Ava finished, her voice raw, Maya's response was immediate and practical. "Where are you right now?" "In the bedroom. I locked the door." "Is he there?" "I think so. He's been quiet for a while." "Okay. Listen to me, Ava. Pack a bag. Just the essentials. Your wallet, your ID, any personal documents you have. Comfortable clothes. Don't take the jewelry. Don't take anything he gave you. Can you do that?" "Yes." Ava said, the simple instructions grounding her. I'm booking a car. It will be on the corner of your block, near the coffee shop on Madison, in 45 minutes. The driver's name is Hector. He'll be in a black Lincoln. Can you get out of the building without him seeing you? Ava's mind went to the service elevator at the end of the hall, the one the staff used. Ethan wouldn't think to watch it. Yes, I can. Good. Send me a picture of yourself before you leave the apartment so I know what you're wearing. Text me the second you're in the car. Don't answer his calls, don't look back, just get out. I'll see you soon. The call ended, and Ava felt a surge of purpose. Maya's clear-headed plan was a lifeline in her sea of chaos. She moved silently around the cavernous walk-in closet, a space larger than her childhood bedroom. She ignored the designer dresses and expensive handbags. Instead, she grabbed a worn pair of jeans, a few soft t-shirts, her prenatal vitamins, and the worn, dog-eared copy of 100 Years of Solitude that had been her companion since college. She packed her laptop and the small portfolio of her own sketches and art concepts she'd kept hidden away, a secret relic of the woman she used to be. Before leaving the room, she stopped in front of the jewelry box on her dresser. Inside lay the engagement ring, a flawless 8-carat diamond that had been featured in magazines. A ring he had used to purchase her compliance. With a steady hand, she picked it up. She walked into the master bathroom and dropped it into the toilet. She didn't watch it sink. She simply flushed. The sound was deeply, profoundly satisfying. Her final act was to write a note, not a letter of anger or heartbreak, but one of cold, hard fact. She took a sheet of her personalized stationery, Ava Chen Sterling, and crossed out the Sterling with a thick black line. Ethan, I am not a line item on your balance sheet. My son is not a complication to be managed. Don't try to find me. Any further communication can go through my lawyer. You will be hearing from them soon. Ava. She left the note on his pillow, on the side of the bed he slept on. Then, slipping her phone into her pocket, she took one last look around the opulent room that had been her cage. She felt nothing. No regret. No nostalgia. Just an urgent, desperate need to be free. She unlocked the bedroom door. The apartment was dark and quiet. A sliver of light shone from under his study door. He was in there, probably drinking his expensive whiskey and planning his damage control strategy. She crept down the long hallway, her heart pounding with every step. The silence was taut, ready to snap. Reaching the service entrance, she slipped through the door and pressed the button for the elevator, praying he wouldn't emerge from his study. The ride down was the longest minute of her life. When the doors opened into the sterile concrete environment of the service bay, she didn't hesitate. She pushed open the heavy door to the street and was hit by the cool, damp night air. The city smelled of rain and exhaust fumes, and to Ava, it was the smell of freedom. She walked quickly, her small duffel bag slung over her shoulder, not daring to look back at the gleaming, monolithic building she had called home. On the corner, just as Maya had said, a discreet black Lincoln was waiting. The back door opened as she approached. "Hector?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The driver, a kind-faced older man, nodded. "Ms. Ava, Ms. Singh sent me. Please get in." She slid into the plush leather seat, and Hector closed the door behind her. The car pulled smoothly away from the curb, melting into the flow of late-night traffic. Ava pulled out her phone and sent a simple text to Maya. In the car, as the Lincoln turned downtown, away from the glittering prison of her old life, Ava finally allowed herself to look back. She could see the top floors of her building, the penthouse lights still burning. She imagined Ethan finding the note, the empty closet, the flushed ring. She imagined his surprise turning to fury. She didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, she was in control of her own story. She was 7 months pregnant, homeless, and her future was a terrifying blank page. But it was her page, and as the car sped towards a new, unknown beginning, Ava placed a hand on her belly and felt not fear, but a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Maya's apartment in Greenwich Village was a world away from the sterile opulence of Fifth Avenue. It was a cozy, chaotic space filled with overflowing bookshelves, stacks of legal briefs, and vibrant textiles from her travels. It smelled of ink, old paper, and strong coffee. It smelled like home. Maya, a whirlwind of energy with dark, intelligent eyes, enveloped Ava in a hug the moment she walked through the door. "You're safe now," she said, her voice fierce and protective. The next few weeks passed in a blur of grief and reinvention. There were days Ava could barely get out of bed, the weight of Ethan's betrayal a physical pressure on her chest. The baby would kick, and she would weep, mourning the family she thought he would have. But Maya was a rock. She didn't coddle Ava, she empowered her. She filled the fridge with healthy food, dragged her on walks through Washington Square Park, and hired a shark of a divorce lawyer named Cassandra Vale, a woman who looked at the details of the sterling prenuptial agreement with a predatory grin. "The infidelity clause is ironclad," Cassandra had said, her voice sharp as a razor. "But he thinks he can control the narrative, paint you as unstable. We need proof of the affair. Concrete proof." Ethan, true to form, had tried to reach her. First came the flood of texts and voicemails, a mix of desperate apologies and furious demands. Then came the emails from his lawyers, couched in condescending legal jargon, offering the generous settlement he had promised his mistress. Ava directed them all to Cassandra and blocked his number. She was building a wall around her new life, brick by brick. The most healing part of her new existence was rediscovering the woman she'd been before Ethan. In a corner of Maya's living room, she set up a small easel. She began to draw, then to paint. At first, her canvases were filled with dark, tumultuous colors, abstract expressions of her pain and anger. But slowly, a new theme emerged. She started painting portraits of strength and resilience, a single mother in the park, an elderly woman navigating the busy streets, Maya arguing a case over the phone. She was finding her voice again, not with words, but with brushstrokes. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, an email landed in her inbox that made her blood run cold. The sender was unfamiliar, Rosicorp.net. The subject line was a single word, meeting. Ava's first instinct was to delete it. Isabella Rossi, the other woman, the co-conspirator in her life's destruction. What could she possibly want? The body of the email was brief and to the point. "Ms. Chen, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I believe we have a mutual interest in the truth. Ethan is not the man either of us thought he was. There is more to this than his infidelity. I will be at the Blue Note Cafe on W 3rd Street tomorrow at 3 p.m. I urge you to come. Alone." Ava stared at the message, her mind racing. A trap? A trick? An attempt by Ethan to get to her through his mistress? It seemed plausible. But there was something in the terse, direct tone of the email that felt different. "Ethan is not the man either of us thought he was." That line snagged her attention. What did it mean? She showed the email to Maya, who was immediately suspicious. "Don't go, Ava. It's a setup. He's using her to manipulate you." "Maybe," Ava conceded, chewing on her lower lip. "But Cassandra needs proof of the affair. If I can get her to admit it, on tape." "It's too risky," Maya insisted. "You're pregnant. You need to protect yourself." "I know," Ava said, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "But Maya, I can't just hide forever. He called me naive, weak. He thinks he can manage me. Showing up to this meeting, it doesn't feel weak. It feels like taking back some control." The next day, Ava walked into the Blue Note Cafe with a tiny recording device hidden in her purse and her heart pounding a nervous rhythm against her ribs. The cafe was quiet, smelling of coffee beans and old wood. In a discreet booth at the back sat Isabella Rossi. In person, She was even more striking than the photos Ava had seen online. She was tall and impeccably dressed in a sharp blazer, with dark hair pulled back into a severe chignon. Her face was angular and intelligent, but her eyes, when they met Ava's, held a surprising weariness. There was none of the triumphant gloating Ava had expected. "Thank you for coming," Isabella said, her voice the same husky tone from the phone call. Ava sat down opposite her, placing her purse on the table between them. "I'm not here to make friends," Ava said, her voice colder than she intended. "What do you want?" Isabella didn't flinch. She slid a manila folder across the table. "I want to show you what you're really up against." Ava hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside were not love letters or scandalous photos, but pages of financial documents, internal memos from Sterling Industries, and encrypted email chains. "I don't understand," Ava said, looking up from a complex spreadsheet. "Ethan didn't just want a merger with my family's company," Isabella explained, her voice low and urgent. "He wants to gut it. My father built Rossi Corp from the ground up. It's his legacy. Ethan's plan, the one he sold to his own board, involves leveraging our tech patents, firing 2/3 of our staff, and then selling off the remaining assets within 5 years. He's a vulture, not a visionary." Ava was stunned. "But the deal, you supported it." A look of self-loathing crossed Isabella's face. "I did, because I was a fool. Ethan didn't just seduce me, he seduced my ambition. He painted a picture of us as a power couple, ruling a new tech empire together. He found my weakness, my desire to prove myself to my father, and he exploited it. The affair. It wasn't about love or passion, not for him. It was a business tactic. It was leverage to get me to convince my father to accept terms that were, in reality, predatory. It all clicked into place. Ethan's coldness, his clinical discussion of the future. It wasn't just about her. He was playing everyone. "When did you figure this out?" Ava asked, a strange sense of kinship stirring beneath her anger. "A few days after that call," Isabella said, unable to meet her eyes. "I started digging. He got careless, left his private server logged in on my laptop. I found his real 5-year plan. I found the offshore accounts where he was planning to divert the profits. And I found his correspondence about you." She pushed another document across the table. It was an email from Ethan to his personal wealth manager, dated 2 weeks before the fateful phone call. The subject was Contingency Plan A. It outlined the exact terms of the settlement for Ava, but it also included strategies for filing for sole custody of their son, using a fabricated history of her emotional instability as grounds. He planned to take her child. The air left Ava's lungs. This went beyond infidelity. This was a level of sociopathic cruelty she could never have imagined. He wasn't just going to discard her. He was going to erase her from her own son's life. She looked up at Isabella, seeing her for the first time not as a rival, but as another woman caught in Ethan's web. A different kind of victim, but a victim nonetheless. "Why are you showing me this?" Ava whispered, her hand shaking as she touched the document. Isabella's gaze was hard as steel. "Because he underestimated us both. He thinks I'm a lovesick fool, and he thinks you're a fragile doll. He's planning to present the final merger documents to both our boards at the annual Sterling Industries shareholder meeting in 2 weeks. He thinks it's his coronation day." She leaned forward, her eyes locking with Ava's. "But he's wrong. My father will listen to me if I bring him irrefutable proof. And your lawyer, I imagine she would find this information very useful. He wants to destroy my father's legacy and take your son. I say we don't let him have either." Ava stared at the woman across the table. The mistress. The enemy. And in that moment, she saw the path forward. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about protecting her son and reclaiming her life. She slowly pushed the recording device in her purse to the off position. She didn't need a secret recording of a confession anymore. She had something far more powerful. "Okay," Ava said, her voice steady and clear. "What's the plan?" An unlikely alliance was forged in that quiet cafe, born from shared betrayal. Two women, on opposite sides of a love triangle, now united against the man who had wronged them both. Ethan Sterling was about to find out what it truly meant to underestimate a woman. Or in his case, two of them. The 2 weeks leading up to the Sterling Industries shareholder meeting were a blur of clandestine activity. Ava's life, once defined by prenatal yoga and nursery decorations, was now a whirlwind of encrypted calls, late-night strategy sessions with Maya and Cassandra, and covert meetings with Isabella. The Greenwich Village apartment became their war room. Charts and timelines covered one of Maya's walls, mapping out Ethan's corporate structure, his key allies on the board, and the timeline of his deception. Isabella, with her insider knowledge, was the architect of their strategy. Ava, with her intimate understanding of Ethan's psychology, provided the human intelligence. Maya and Cassandra were the legal artillery, preparing the cannons. It was a strange and powerful dynamic. Ava learned to compartmentalize her pain, channeling her heartbreak into a laser-focused determination. Working with Isabella was not easy. Every time she looked at her, she was reminded of the intimate words she'd overheard on the phone. But with each piece of evidence they uncovered, her personal resentment was overshadowed by the sheer scale of Ethan's treachery. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He had defrauded his future partners, misled his own board, and planned to cruelly strip a mother of her child. Isabella, for her part, was relentlessly focused. She was driven by a cold fury and a deep need to protect her family's legacy. She provided Ava and Cassandra with a treasure trove of evidence: Ethan's hidden 5-year plan, the details of the offshore accounts, and damning email exchanges between him and a notoriously ruthless corporate raider, a man named Liam O'Connell, who was clearly his silent partner in the scheme. "O'Connell is the shark," Isabella explained during one late-night meeting, pointing to his name on their chart. "He specializes in hostile takeovers. Ethan brings him the target, Rossi Corp., and O'Connell provides the back-channel financing to gut it. They both stand to make a fortune, while Sterling Industries takes all the public-facing risk." Cassandra Vale's eyes gleamed. "This is better than an affair. This is conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. It invalidates entire sections of the prenuptial agreement. It gives us leverage I never dreamed of." While Isabella and the lawyers focused on the corporate assault, Ava's role became more personal. She began reaching out, subtly, to the people Ethan had dismissed. She had lunch with Ethan's former executive assistant, a woman he had fired for a minor mistake months ago. Over salads, the woman tearfully confessed that Ethan had forced her to book his hotel suites for his meetings with Isabella and to falsify expense reports to cover his tracks. She had emails. She was terrified, but willing to talk. Ava also reconnected with a few of the board members' wives, women she'd met at charity functions. She didn't reveal her hand, but she spoke of her concerns for the company's direction, of Ethan's recent erratic behavior. She planted seeds of doubt, leveraging the very social network Ethan had expected her to be a passive ornament in. He thought her world was small. He never realized how observant she was within it. One evening, as Ava was sketching in her notebook, an idea struck her. It was audacious, risky, and deeply personal. "Cassandra," she said during their next call, "what if we go after the one person Ethan is truly afraid of?" "And who might that be?" Cassandra asked. "His father," Ava replied, "Arthur Sterling." Arthur Sterling was the patriarch, the founder of the empire. He was old school, a man for whom reputation and legacy were everything. He had officially retired, handing the CEO reins to Ethan, but he remained the chairman of the board and its moral compass. He adored Ava, seeing in her the stable, grounding force his ambitious son needed. "He'll never believe it," Isabella cautioned from across the room. "Ethan is his golden boy, his heir." "He won't believe rumors," Ava countered. "But he is a man of honor. If we present him with undeniable proof of a plot that would tarnish the Sterling name forever, he will have to act. The plan was set. They would not wait for the shareholder meeting. They would preempt it. They would request a private emergency meeting with Arthur Sterling. Cassandra drafted the official request. It was formal, citing grave concerns regarding the Rossi Corp merger and potential malfeasance by the CEO that threatens the core integrity of Sterling Industries. The language was designed to be alarming enough to secure the meeting, but vague enough not to tip their hand to Ethan. The day before the scheduled meeting, a wave of fear washed over Ava. She was 8 months pregnant now, her body heavy and tired. The stress was immense. What if Arthur sided with his son? What if they laughed her out of the room? She felt the baby kick, a strong, reassuring thump. This was for him. This was for a future free from his father's toxic legacy. That night, she received a blocked call. Against her better judgment, she answered. It was Ethan. His voice was no longer pleading or angry. It was terrifyingly calm. "I know what you're doing, Ava," he said, his voice a low hiss. "Meeting with my father, trying to poison him against me. You and that snake Isabella." Ava's blood ran cold. "How did you—" "I have my ways," he cut her off. "I want to warn you. You are playing a game you cannot win. You think you have leverage? I will bury you. I will prove you're an unfit mother. I will take our son, and you will never see him again. I will make sure of it. Drop this, Ava. Walk away with the settlement, and maybe I'll be generous with visitation. This is your last chance." The threat hung in the air, vile and terrifying. But hearing it, so bald and cruel, something inside Ava solidified. The last vestiges of the woman who had loved him, who had mourned him, vanished. All that was left was a mother protecting her child. "I'll see you at the board meeting, Ethan," she said, her voice as calm as his. "And you'll see exactly what kind of game I'm playing." She hung up the phone, her hand steady. The storm was no longer gathering. It was about to break. The Sterling Industries headquarters occupied the top 20 floors of a skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. The main boardroom was on the 75th floor, a space designed to intimidate. It was a cavern of mahogany, chrome, and black leather, with a panoramic view of the city that made the world outside seem small and insignificant. Arthur Sterling sat at the head of the long, polished table. He was a man in his late 60s, with a full head of white hair and eyes that still held the sharp, assessing glint of the titan of industry he was. He looked severe, his expression unreadable. To his right sat a grim-faced Ethan. The other board members, a collection of stony-faced men and women in their 50s and 60s, lined the sides of the table, their folders closed before them. The emergency meeting had been granted. The atmosphere was thick with tension. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Arthur began, his voice a low rumble that commanded attention. "My son's fiancée, Ms. Chen, and Miss Rossi of Rossi Corp. have requested this meeting to discuss matters they claim are of urgent importance to the future of this company. I will admit, I find this highly irregular." He fixed his gaze on Ava. "Ms. Chen, the floor is yours." Ava stood, her pregnant belly a prominent, silent statement. She felt 100 pairs of eyes on her, judging, questioning. She saw Ethan watching her, a smug, contemptuous smirk on his lips. He thought this was the desperate, emotional act of a scorned woman. He was about to be corrected. She took a deep breath, her gaze meeting Arthur Sterling's directly. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling, and members of the board," she began, her voice clear and strong, echoing slightly in the silent room. "I know my presence here is unusual. You know me as Ethan's fiancée, the future mother of his son. You see me as a private person, separate from the business of this company. Ethan himself has often reminded me of that separation." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But I am here today because I have learned that his private actions and his business dealings are not separate at all. In fact, they are one and the same, and they are built on a foundation of deceit that threatens to destroy the reputation and integrity of the Sterling name." Ethan scoffed loudly. "Father, this is ridiculous. She's distraught. Our personal issues have no place here. This is a private matter being aired out to embarrass me. Is it, Ethan? A sharp voice cut through the room. Isabella Rossi stood up, poised and formidable. She held a tablet in her hand. Is your plan to systematically dismantle my family's company and funnel the profits into an offshore account with corporate raider Liam O'Connell a private matter? A shocked murmur went through the room. Ethan's face went pale. That is a slanderous and unfounded accusation, he blustered, rising from his chair. Is it? Isabella said coolly. She tapped her tablet, and the large screen at the end of the boardroom flickered to life. It displayed an email chain. The header was clear. From E. Sterling to L. O'Connell. Subject, Rossi Acquisition. Phase 2, Asset Liquidation. The board members leaned forward, their eyes wide. Isabella calmly narrated as she scrolled through the damning correspondence, the 5-year plan to gut Rossi Corp., the list of assets to be sold, the Cayman Islands account number. This is fabricated, Ethan sputtered, his voice cracking. She's a jilted lover trying to sabotage the deal. Am I? Isabella countered. Then perhaps you can explain this. She switched the screen to show the detailed wire transfer requests to his personal wealth manager, the ones outlining the very settlement he had described on the phone call. And then, the final, most damning document, the custody strategy. Grounds for sole custody, document history of emotional instability, pre- and postpartum, cite lack of familial support, position as a more stable financial and emotional guardian. Ava spoke again, her voice resonating with quiet power. He wasn't just going to leave me. He was going to use the resources of this company to take my son and paint me as an unfit mother, all so he could continue his life, unencumbered, with Ms. Rossi, a partnership he was also deceiving. All eyes turned to Ethan. The smugness was gone, replaced by a wild, cornered panic. He looked at his father, his face pleading. Father, you can't believe this. It's a lie. They're conspiring against me. Arthur Sterling had remained silent throughout the presentation, his face a mask of stone. Now he looked at his son, and for the first time, Ava saw a flicker of profound disappointment in his eyes. He looked less like a chairman and more like a heartbroken father. Is it a lie, Ethan? Arthur asked, his voice dangerously soft. I have a long-standing relationship with the head of forensics at Kroll. It would take them less than an hour to verify the authenticity of these server logs. Shall I make that call? Ethan's composure shattered. The silence in the room was absolute. He looked from his father's stony face to the shocked and disgusted expressions of the board members. He looked at Isabella's cold fury and at Ava's steady, unbroken gaze. He was trapped. Utterly and completely. He sank back into his chair, a broken man. He didn't say another word. Arthur Sterling stood up, his presence filling the room. He looked around the table at his board. It is clear, he said, his voice heavy with authority and sorrow, that my son is no longer fit to lead this company. He has acted without integrity, without honor, and has put the entire future of Sterling Industries at risk with his reckless and fraudulent behavior. I will be entertaining a motion for his immediate removal as CEO and his resignation from this board. A board member immediately spoke. I so move. Seconded, said another. All in favor? Arthur asked. A chorus of ayes filled the room. It was unanimous. In the span of 10 minutes, Ethan Sterling had lost everything. His company, his reputation, his future. Ava didn't feel a sense of triumph. She didn't feel joy. As she watched Ethan being escorted from the room by security, looking like a ghost, she felt a profound and weary sadness. A sadness for the man he could have been, for the love she thought they had, and for the life that had been so cruelly revealed as a lie. She had won. But the victory felt heavy. As she and Isabella shared a brief, silent nod of acknowledgement across the room, Ava knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a much longer, much more difficult journey, building a new life from the ashes of the old one. The downfall of Ethan Sterling was swift and brutal. The story that leaked to the press was a carefully managed version, creative differences, and a new strategic direction. But in the closed circles of New York finance and society, the truth spread like wildfire. Ethan became a pariah overnight. In the aftermath, Ava felt like she was emerging from a long, dark tunnel. Cassandra Vale, armed with the irrefutable evidence of Ethan's fraud and malicious intent, renegotiated everything. The prenup was shredded. The settlement Ava received was not the dismissive payoff Ethan had planned, but a substantial private transfer of assets that ensured she and her son would be secure for life. More importantly, it included a legally binding agreement, signed by a humbled Ethan, relinquishing any future custody claims and agreeing to supervised visitation only, at Ava's sole discretion. She had protected her son. That was the only victory that mattered. Isabella Rossi, having saved her family's company, returned to Italy to help her father restructure and fortify it against future predators. Before she left, she and Ava met one last time for coffee. "I'm sorry, Ava," Isabella said, her gaze direct. "For my part in all of this, I was blinded by ambition. I never considered the human cost." "He played us both, Isabella," Ava replied, a newfound sense of peace settling in her. "We were just pieces on his chessboard. The only thing we can do now is refuse to be pawns in anyone's game ever again." They parted not as friends, but with a hard-won mutual respect. Two women who had briefly been adversaries, then allies, now survivors. Ava did not stay in Maya's apartment. With a portion of her settlement, she bought a beautiful, light-filled brownstone in Brooklyn. It wasn't a penthouse with a view of the park. It was a home with a small, overgrown garden in the back. It had scuffed wooden floors, walls that needed painting, and a large, airy attic room that she immediately claimed as her art studio. She spent the last month of her pregnancy in a flurry of nesting that was entirely her own. She painted the walls, not in nursery blues, but in warm, vibrant colors. She bought second-hand furniture with character and history. She filled the shelves with books and art supplies. She was not recreating a life. She was building one from scratch, with her own two hands. 2 weeks after her due date, on a crisp February morning, Liam Chen was born. He had Ava's dark eyes and a surprisingly strong grip. Holding him in her arms for the first time, Ava felt a love so fierce and overwhelming it eclipsed all the pain that had come before. This was real. This was the great love story. Not the one with the millionaire in the penthouse, but the one with this tiny, perfect human who was hers and hers alone. The following years were a quiet renaissance. Ava poured her heart, her pain, her joy, and her resilience onto her canvases. Her work, once abstract and dark, blossomed. She painted a series titled The Gilded Cage, depicting beautiful, opulent rooms with subtle, unsettling details, a cracked mirror, a distorted reflection, a shadow where there should be none. Then came The Alliance, a series of dual portraits of women, their faces showing a mixture of vulnerability and strength. Her old contacts from her gallery days, hearing she was painting again, came for studio visits. They were blown away. Her work was no longer just technically proficient. It was imbued with a raw, emotional depth that was undeniable. It told a story. Her first solo show, held at a chic Soho gallery, was a resounding success. Titled Authenticity, it was a chronicle of her journey. Critics raved about the honesty and power of her work. The centerpiece of the show was a large, striking painting. It depicted a woman, her face serene and strong, holding a baby. The woman's body was subtly traced with golden cracks, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer, making it more beautiful for having been broken. One afternoon, as her show was nearing its end, a familiar figure appeared at the gallery. It was Ethan. He looked older, his swagger replaced by a quiet hesitancy. He had lost the sterling arrogance and gained a haunted look in his eyes. He stood for a long time in front of the kintsugi painting. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice raspy. He didn't look at Ava, only at the canvas. "Is that how you see yourself?" "It's how I see strength," Ava replied calmly, holding Liam's small hand in hers. Her son, now a curious toddler, peeked out from behind her leg. "Our scars don't have to be sources of shame. They can be part of our story, part of what makes us who we are." Ethan finally met her gaze. The guilt in his eyes was profound. "I was a fool, Ava. I destroyed the only real thing I ever had, for an empire of dust." He had tried, in his own fumbling way, to be a father. He sent birthday gifts. He attended the supervised visits, playing quietly with Liam in a public park under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. He was a shadow in their lives, a constant reminder of the past, but no longer a threat. "Goodbye, Ethan," Ava said softly. It wasn't forgiving, and it wasn't forgetting. It was closure. It was her, finally and completely, closing the door on that chapter of her life. He nodded, gave one last longing look at his son, and walked out of the gallery. Ava watched him go, feeling not anger or pity, but a sense of peace. Her life was not the fairy tale she had once imagined. It was something far better. It was real. It was messy, complicated, and beautiful. It was hers. She looked down at Liam, who smiled up at her, and she squeezed his hand. Together they turned back to the paintings, to the life they had built. Not in a penthouse in the sky, but on the solid ground of truth, resilience, and authentic, hard-won love. Ava's incredible journey from a betrayed wife in a gilded cage to a celebrated artist and a powerful mother is a testament to the human spirit. Her story shows us that our deepest wounds can become our greatest strengths, and true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in authenticity, connection, and the courage to rebuild. It's a reminder that sometimes losing a life you thought was perfect is the only way to find the one you were truly meant to live. If this story of overcoming betrayal and finding your own voice resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need to hear a message of hope and resilience. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful, true-to-life stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul. What did you think of Ava's final choice? Let us know in the comments below.